The prison at Andersonville, officially named Camp Sumter, was the South's largest prison for captured Union soldiers and known for its unhealthy conditions and high death rate. A great many were terribly afflicted with diarrhea, and scurvy began to take a hold of some. Scurvy is a bad disease, and taken in connection with the former sure death. Some had dropsy as well as scurvy, and the swollen limbs and body are sad to see. The ruler of the camp was Captain Henry Wirtz, a Switzerland immigrant. Beginning in late February 1864, prisoners started to arrive in Andersonville, which continued to run for 14 months after, and more than 45,000 Union soldiers were eventually confined here. Over the next few months, approximately 400 Union prisoners arrived at Andersonville each day. Almost 13,000 prisoners of war died from disease, poor sanitation, malnutrition, overcrowding, or exposure to elements.
Constructed mainly through the use of slave labor, a 15 to 17-foot wall surrounded Andersonville. This wall was enlarged in June 1864 to contain 26.5 acres of lands. Near the edge of this wall existed a deadline that prisoners were forbidden to cross. This line resided 19 feet from the main wall. This deadline was intended to prevent prisoners from climbing over the stockade or from tunneling under it. By the end of June, 26,000 men were penned in an area originally meant for only 10,000 prisoners. This overflow of prisoners irritated everyone, causing guards to frequently brutalize inmates, and inmates to frequently fight one another. This eventually caused outrage in the Union prior to freeing the soldiers in the camp. Camp Sumter began to be known as a cruel camp full of old, decaying soldiers.
The largest number of prisoners held at Andersonville at a time was more than 33,000 in August 1864. Michigan cavalryman John Ramsden confided to his diary how there is so much filth about the camp that it is terrible trying to live here. One prisoner, Michigan cavalry John Ramsden, confided to his diary, with sunken eyes, blackened facial expressions from pine, smoke, rags, disease, and the men look sickening, the air reeks with nastiness. At times, over 50% of inmates were ill. The river flowing through the fort was intended to provide water, but turned into a cesspool of disease and human waste. John Ramsden stated how he walked around the camp every morning looking for acquaintances, the sick, and he could see that dozens of people almost every morning lay around dead.
After the Civil War finished, General Henry Wirtz was arrested and tried for war crimes, as the poor conditions of his camp killed thousands. In return, Henry Wirtz was executed. The Andersonville prison affected the outcome of the Civil War greatly by influencing the Union citizens with its cruel conditions.
During and after the war, many Northern citizens were outraged by the unjust conditions their families were placed in. Furthermore, the unhealthy conditions of nearly every prisoner in the Andersonville camp caused issues in more than local families.
Prisoners released into the public who did not have living families or relatives could be a burden on others, specifically due to the disease and horrific conditions that were in Andersonville. Releasing these prisoners could have spread sickness into the public. The social dissent between the North and the South made the war even more brutal and passionate than it was.